I'm Janet Clark, and you are listening to the Sales Matchmaker Podcast. Hello, I am Janet Clark, the Sales Matchmaker. Thank you for tuning into the Sales Matchmaker Podcast, where we help high-ticket coaches, consultants, and sales pros to get better at sales. And to me, sales is an acronym for sharing a life-enhancing solution. So today, I have an important question for you, which is, how do you feel about cold calling? Now, by cold calling, I mean interrupting someone who you've never spoken with and doing it for the purpose of starting a conversation. So cold calling is defined as an unsolicited call, either by telephone or in person, or in our new world, through social media, which is really direct outreach. So another way that I like to describe cold calling is outbound prospecting. And it's doing this outbound prospecting to someone who you've never met with and you've never spoken to through any other medium. So I bet that you, to some degree, you are doing cold calling, and you probably don't refer to it that way because just hearing the words cold calling may raise your hackles a little bit, right? And it gives you that ick factor, which I know that's how it is for me. I actually resist the term, and technically I don't use it anymore. But here's the thing. I mean, cold calling has a bad rap because we associate it, right, with the telemarketers who are calling us at dinner time, or even those people who are calling us on our cell phones in the middle of our workday and trying to interrupt us to be salesy and slimy and throw up all over us with whatever it is they're trying to get us to buy. So today I want to reframe the concept of cold calling as it relates to us, coaches, consultants, and high-ticket sales professionals. And the thing is, we have to do a certain amount of cold calling, but we can use the internet to do it. But we have to do that in order to fill our pipeline. It's really important to think about how to shift your mindset about cold calling so that you can kind of go from the way you may be perceiving it now to recognizing that it is a way that you will fill your pipeline if you do it correctly using social media, email marketing, or any kind of messenger service, whether it's LinkedIn Messenger, Facebook. And I will like to redefine cold calling as organic outreach, prospecting, or establishing your social currency. So I'm going to tell you why this is really a critical part of the sales process. And then I'm going to tell you how to do it and why using scripts is not the way to do it. So if you're anything like me, you will not answer a phone call from an unknown number, but you probably will engage in a messenger conversation through Facebook or LinkedIn in the right circumstances. So just to be clear, when I'm talking about cold calling, I am not talking about dialing for dollars or those robocalls that we all get from those centers, whatever they are, outgoing call centers in India or whatever. What I'm talking about is something a lot more personalized that would be considered conversational outreach, similar to tapping somebody on the shoulder so that they notice you and then starting a conversation with them. Now, look, you only have a few seconds to get somebody's attention. And when you do that, you must differentiate yourself from all the other interrupters who are out there. And yes, when you reach out unsolicited, you are interrupting people. So you better make it worth their while. So after introducing yourself, you have to turn the focus of the prospect into something about them, right? You have to focus on them and make it personal, which means that you better know something about them. My business partner, Tobin Slavin, he has really mastered this process, and he calls it conversations at scale. And it's a powerful way to fill your sales pipeline. In my corporate days, we called it prospecting. See, when I first learned to sell in the B2B space, there were no closers unless you were selling timeshares or used cars. Nobody was a closer. Maybe if you were working in some kind of an inbound call center, you could have been considered a closer. So the word actually strikes a negative connotation in me, because the closers were always the heavy hitters, right? The ones that came in the end to badger you into buying something, to shame you into buying something. And so they were very skilled at manipulation techniques. Now, in today's world, the word closer actually has a different meaning. And it's not really so negative, right? It's always attached to somebody who is able to take a preset call and close it. So I guess in some ways I could be considered a closer, even though I kind of resist that terminology in my work with the Selling the Ask Method coaching program for Ryan Levesque, right? I am technically a closer because he and his marketing team generate and qualify the leads, and they are then put on my calendar. However, there is really only a very limited market demand for closers. Those coaches and consultants who have a continuous flow of leads that are already qualified would be looking for closers, but they are few and far between. Now, the other thing is that there are some coaches and consultants who will tell you that they have leads, and you may be one of them because you invest in ads. But what I can also tell you from experience is that all leads are not created equal. So even though some of you and some other coaches and consultants that you salespeople may be encountering will fill your calendar up with appointments, that does not mean that those appointments are qualified. It takes a lot of dialing in to qualify those leads. And you probably know what I'm talking about if you have spent as many hours as I have talking to broke people and tire kickers, or having your calendar filled with calls with half of them being no-shows. So most 6 and 7 figure business owners, coaches, and consultants do not have the budget to invest in marketing teams who can continually generate these qualified leads, nurture those leads through a series of educational experiences, and then consistently keep the salesperson's calendar busy. So the truth of the matter is that most of us are generating our own leads, right? Through some sort of combination, whether it's referrals, word of mouth, or organic outreach. Those methods are great and will always continue to do those, but they are not predictable. The key is that you need to be able to systemize your prospecting and your outreach, or your cold calling, or whatever you want to call it, through some method using whatever channels are best to reach your ideal clients. Now, we have found that LinkedIn is the primary platform for anyone who serves entrepreneurs and or executives. So I call this the B2E market. It's either business to executive or business to entrepreneur. And this is really where we specialize in SalesMap. How do you create a systematic process for cold calling? Well, first and foremost, you have to recognize that there is no one size fits all message, which is the reason why you can never use a script. So the key to successful outreach is that you have to be able to engage your ideal client in a personal conversation, and you have to do it in a complimentary way. Now, there are two major considerations that you have to have in place beforehand. Number one, you have to have an irresistible offer. You have to know exactly what you are offering. And number two, you have to know who is your ideal client. And that is something that I have found many, many coaches and consultants do not have a really good handle on. So, how do you determine whether you have a great irresistible offer and you have your ideal client zeroed in on? Well, that is a topic for another episode, right? That's the big preliminary step that most coaches and consultants need to do as their sort of their growth strategy in their business. Because I feel like what I've learned after talking with hundreds and thousands of coaches and consultants is that they start off broad and they start off offering a myriad of services to people. And that's okay, but it's only going to get you so far. And it's not really going to help you with this approach to cold calling. So what happens is we start by taking on anybody who will give us money and offering whatever they think they need that we think we can provide. And it works to a degree, right? We build up the business to a certain level, but we end up having some clients from hell, and we end up recognizing that there are some clients that we like working with and some that we don't, and some things that we like offering and some things that we don't. So really part of the strategic growth process to break out of that six-figure barrier is to get this dialed in, right? Who really is your ideal client and what is the irresistible offer that you have for that person? So again, those two things have to be in place. And if you don't have those things in place, then reach out to me and I'll give you some guidance as to how to get that done. But that really is a critical factor before you can get into this cold calling approach. Now, let's get back to the cold calling. Because with that, there are three things that are really going to make it work for you. So they're all start with C. The first is comments, the second is compliments, and the third is curiosity. So look, does your ideal client post content? Do they have a podcast? Maybe they run an online Facebook group. Do they do regular live streams? Whatever they're putting out there for content, go ahead and start commenting on that, right? When you do that, you're doing what we call getting on the radar. Now they're starting to see you. You're coming into their awareness, but you're doing it in a very low-key way. And the next thing is look at their work. Like, what impresses you about their work? Something about maybe their background. Maybe there's some content that they've put out that really impresses you, or you're impressed with their website. Compliment them on whatever it is that you find impressive about them. Now, that's not going to be that hard, because if they're your ideal client, they're somebody that you would want to work with, then there's something you like about them. So make sure that you give them a compliment. And the third thing is, if you want to engage them then in a conversation, you have to be genuinely curious about them and interested in them personally and in their business. Now, why does this curiosity thing work? Because truly, everybody's favorite subject is me, myself, and I. So when you ask good questions, and you are genuinely interested in the other person, they are going to be very happy to open up to you and to start telling you things about themselves and about their business that are going to help you to figure out whether they would be a good candidate for what you have to offer. So look, being curious doesn't mean waiting to pounce on them with your offer. It means seeking first to understand and then to be understood. Don't try to sell them anything Just try to learn more about them. So, a lot of us feel this desperation to go out there and engage with someone so that we can make them an offer. Now, ultimately, yes, we do want to make them an offer, but first we have to figure out if they're in the market for what we have to offer. And the only way you can do that is by asking really good questions. Again, a subject for another episode, right? How to ask really good questions. But look, the main thing that you have to know is that you must throw out the scripts. You don't need scripted messaging, and you shouldn't be using scripts on your discovery calls either. Practice being a diagnostician. Think of yourself as a trusted advisor, someone who is an expert in your industry, and or maybe a doctor who needs to understand the patient. So anyway, back to the scripts. You do have to think of yourself as somebody who is digging a little bit for what's underneath the surface to determine if this person is in the market for what you have to offer. So that's really important. So if you're a doctor and you're trying to treat a problem that somebody comes in with, you have to ask a lot of questions before you can prescribe a course of treatment. So think of yourself in that respect, but don't do it in a way that makes you like they've got them on the stand, right? Like you're a lawyer grilling them. You want it to be conversational. And that's one of the key things that will really make you this engagement with your cold calling work for you. Great prospecting and the ability to reach out to your ideal prospects really is a vital skill in today's high ticket world. And unless you have really, really deep pockets and thousands of dollars to spend on ads, it's going to be a critical element in your success. So don't be so resistant to it, even though you don't like the words. So just reframe the way you think about cold calling. Top coaches and consultants really do understand that the systematic conversational outreach, or cold calling, is the key to generating millions of dollars in sales. And it's really an art and a science. That's really what cold calling is. You can become a really high paid expert in your industry. So you have to keep reminding yourself that you are there to serve and help people. You are going out there with the intent to share a life enhancing solution. But that solution will only enhance somebody's life if, in fact, they want that solution. So if you call upon someone who can benefit from your program or your offer, then you can actually help them to improve their life and their business. One of the things I like to do, and I did this exercise actually recently, and it was pretty eye-opening even to me. So take some time to look back at your calendar, and maybe for the last month or two, and look at where you've spent your time and really consider how much time have you spent prospecting. And you may find that it hasn't been that much, but then look at how much time have you spent on unqualified sales calls, on phone calls with people who were not going to buy your offer. How much time have you spent creating content just for the sake of creating content because you think that's what you're supposed to do because the gurus tell you that you are supposed to do that? How much time have you spent on live streams? How much time have you spent going through somebody's training program that you just invested $497 or maybe $1997 to buy? How much time have you spent on non-revenue generating business tasks? And now is a really good time to do that, right? Look at what is really going on with your time in your business and how much of that time is actually revenue producing versus non-revenue producing. So I can tell you that when you spend your time on prospecting, filling your pipeline, that is revenue producing activity. Now, what if you could set aside 1 hour every single day and dedicated that to cold calling, or what I'll refer to as conversational outreach, I can tell you that would be a game changer. And I know this because I've experienced it firsthand myself and with my clients. What we teach in SalesMap is just that. Find a way to build in time to do the outbound prospecting. It works, and it really just requires dedication and a shift in focus. Filling the pipeline does not have to be hard. You can do it systematically, and you can do it systematically if you dedicate time to do it. So you prioritize that time. Now, you're also going to need a system, a CRM, to manage that pipeline, because otherwise it becomes just throwing darts at the dartboard. And what we want is we want a system. We don't want random things, throw shit on the wall and hope it sticks. We want some sort of a systematic approach to engage with people, bring them into your world, have a conversation with them, and bring them through the process to the point where they are interested in hearing about your offer. So give it a try. And if you want my help, or you just want to chat about your insights or thoughts about this, reach out to me at janet@salesmap.me. And happy selling. I will be back next week with more insights into how to share a life-enhancing solution, meaning sell more. All right. Talk to you later. Bye for now.